My name is Mallory Keene. 3 nights after I moved into my fiancé's house, I was kneeling on his kitchen floor when an old woman whispered my name through the heating vent. Mallory. I stayed there with one hand resting on the brass register. Then she said, slowly enough that I had to lean closer, "Do not sign it." Grant was supposed to be 40 minutes away, looking at water damage in a dentist's office. There was nobody else in the house. At least, there was not supposed to be. The only part of the house Grant had forbidden me to enter was the basement. He said there was mold behind the paneling, exposed wiring near the furnace, and enough contractor debris to put a nail through my foot. He owned a residential restoration company. I inspected damaged houses for an insurance carrier. Explanation made sense, so I had never questioned the locked basement door until somebody underneath it knew my name. I waited beside the vent for almost a minute. "Can you hear me?" Nothing. I looked toward the hallway. The basement door was 12 feet away, white painted wood with a newer brass lock that did not match anything else in the house. "Hello?" 3 metallic knocks traveled through the duct. I pulled my hand back, then made myself put it down again. If there is someone downstairs, knock 3 times. 3 knocks. I still had a mug of coffee beside me. I remember that because I picked it up and carried it around for the next 20 minutes without drinking it. By the time I noticed, the coffee was cold. "What is your name?" Silence. The furnace blower kicked on. Air rushed through the register and ended the conversation. Grant came home at 6 carrying groceries and complaining about a subcontractor who had parked a dumpster in the wrong driveway. He kissed my forehead. "You look wiped out." "Long day," I said. "Thought you worked from home this afternoon," he said. "I did." He pulled a package of pasta from a grocery bag. "Exactly. Home is exhausting." That was Grant. Dry little jokes. Dinner without being asked, knowing when my car needed an oil change before I did. I had moved into his brick Cape Cod in Cheviot 6 weeks before our wedding because maintaining 2 households had started to feel ridiculous. I still owned the duplex my aunt left me across town. Grant had been encouraging me to refinance it so we could put more cash into what he called our shared future. I had an appointment with a lender that Friday. Do not sign it. Grant cooked while I sat at the kitchen island watching him mince garlic. I nearly asked him, "Who is downstairs?" Instead, I said, "Any contractors here today?" He looked up. "No. Why?" I said. "Thought I heard a radio." He said, "Probably next door," and went back to chopping. I watched the knife move through the garlic. "What?" he asked. I realized he had caught me staring. Nothing. The following morning, I waited until Grant's truck disappeared before turning off the kitchen fan and lowering myself beside the vent. "Can you hear me?" 3 knocks. "Yesterday you said my name." A faint scrape came through the duct. Then a woman's voice. "Yes." "Who are you?" The answer took several attempts. Judith. I knew the name. Judith Avery, Grant's mother. According to Grant, Judith had suffered a severe stroke the year before and now lived in a specialized care facility outside Knoxville. He said she struggled to recognize people and barely spoke. I had never met her. Grant claimed visits upset her. Judith Avery? 3 knocks. I sat flat on the kitchen floor. Grant's mother? Yes. I heard breathing below me. Then, laboriously, ask him who owns house. The furnace started again. This time I did not wait for it to stop. I went upstairs, opened my laptop, and did the kind of thing I do every day for work. I checked the paperwork. Property records showed the house belonged to Judith L. Avery. It had belonged to her for 22 years. There was no transfer to Grant, no buyout, no inheritance. Grant had told me he bought his mother's share when she moved into care. That afternoon, I drove around without going anywhere in particular. At a red light, I called Naomi Flores. Naomi and I had worked claims together for 12 years. She had been through 2 hurricanes, an office merger, and my parents' second attempt at suing each other over a lake cabin. She listened without interrupting. Then she said, "Leave the house." I said, "I cannot." She answered, You absolutely can. If his mother is actually down there, I said. Naomi cut in. Then call somebody. And say what? My fiancé elderly mother is living in her own basement? Naomi said. You said the door is locked. I do not know if it is locked from her side. Naomi said. You do not know anything, Mal. That is why you get out first. She was right. I drove back anyway. People assume my job teaches you to distrust people. It does not. Mostly it teaches you to distrust explanations that do not match physical facts. A homeowner tells you a pipe burst yesterday, but the joists are black from 6 months of moisture. Somebody says a door was forced open, but the splintering points the wrong direction. Houses record what people do to them. Grant's house started recording things I had ignored. There were 2 brands of yogurt in the refrigerator. Grant hated yogurt. A pharmacy envelope in the recycling had Judith's name on it. The basement door had old paint and new screws. A cedar privacy screen along the back foundation had newer boards than the fence around it. That evening, Grant made pasta with roasted tomatoes because it was my favorite. Halfway through dinner, he glanced toward the floor. Did you move the kitchen register? I looked at him. What? He said. It is crooked. I had replaced it badly after speaking to Judith. Grant set down his fork. You been investigating me? His tone was light, almost teasing. I picked up my wine and took too large a drink. I dropped an earring. Into the vent? He asked. Next to it, I said. He watched me for another second, then smiled. You claims people are dangerous. The conversation moved on. That night I slept beside him wearing jeans and a sweatshirt. The next morning I inspected the outside of the house. The cedar screen near the foundation was built to hide 2 concrete steps leading to Anne. Exterior basement door. Grant had told me the door was permanently sealed. It was not. The metal latch was new. There was also a small basement window near ground level. I crouched beside it and wiped away the dirt. A bedroom sat on the other side. A real bedroom, with a bed, lamp, television, books, small refrigerator, and a pill organizer on a folding table. An older woman sat in a chair beside the bed. Her gray hair was cut short. Her right arm rested stiffly against her lap. I tapped the glass. She turned. For a second, neither of us moved. Then Judith stood. It took effort. Her right leg dragged slightly. When she reached the window, she touched 2 fingers to the glass. I did the same. I mouthed, Are you locked in? She looked toward the ceiling, then nodded. I found the exterior door. It was locked from outside. I went back to the window. How long? Judith raised 4 fingers, hesitated, then added another. 5 months. I should have called the police immediately. Naomi later told me that at least 20 times. The truth is, I did not understand what I was looking at yet. The room downstairs did not look like captivity. It looked like caregiving. There were clean clothes, medication, food, a television remote, a walker, and even flowers. Dried and brittle, sitting in a plastic cup. That was what made it difficult. Judith motioned for me to return to the kitchen. Through the furnace vent, we talked in broken pieces. She told me the stroke had affected her speech and right side, not her judgment. Grant had moved in temporarily after she came home from rehabilitation. Then he started telling people she was confused. She said he disconnected her phone because she was calling people at night. He told Elise, his older sister, that Judith became agitated after family contact. When Judith objected to Grant using her money for his business, he moved her bedroom downstairs, supposedly because it was safer than the stairs. Then he began locking the doors. Why did you not scream? The question came out before I could stop it. Judith was quiet. When she answered, her voice was almost embarrassed. I did. I shut my eyes. She said the neighbors had been told she was in Tennessee. Grant played music when contractors visited. The basement walls were insulated. After a stroke, an elderly woman shouting from inside her own house apparently did not sound like a mystery anyone was waiting to solve. Then Judith asked me something. Duplex? Still yours? I opened my eyes. How do you know about my duplex? Her answer took almost a minute. Grant talks. About what? I asked. Money. That was the point when the basement stopped being somebody else's nightmare. I drove straight to my duplex. My aunt had bought it in 1987. Beige siding, narrow porches, one upstairs unit that always smelled faintly of cumin because my tenants cooked every meal from scratch. I sat in the empty downstairs kitchen and pulled my credit reports. There was a recent financing inquiry I did not recognize. No loan had been opened. No money had disappeared. Something had only begun, and that frightened me more. Months earlier, while planning the wedding, Grant had offered to help organize our financial paperwork. I had given him a folder containing tax returns, insurance documents, and information about the duplex. He had not broken into a safe. I had handed him everything. That evening, Grant stood at the stove making chicken soup. "You are home late." "Stopped at the duplex," I said. He looked at me. "Everything okay?" "Fine." He dried his hands on a dish towel. "Did you think any more about Friday?" "The lender." I made myself shrug. "I think you are right." His face changed only slightly. Relief. "That is great," he said. I told him, "I am tired of keeping everything separate." He came around the counter and hugged me. For 1 second I almost cried against his shoulder. He smelled like laundry detergent and onions. "I knew you would get there," he said. That sentence stayed with me, not because it sounded threatening, but because it sounded loving. Grant opened champagne that night. While he poured it, I understood something I had been resisting. A person did not have to hate you to exploit you. Grant loved me. I believe that even now. He also believed that eventually I would understand why whatever he needed was more important than whatever I had said no to. The next morning, I called Naomi. Then, I found Elise Avery. Grant had described his sister as unstable, greedy, and obsessed with inheritance. Elise answered on the second ring. When I said Judith's name, she stopped speaking. "I am Grant's fiancée. "I know who you are," she said. "Your mother is not in Tennessee." Another silence. "Where is she?" I looked toward the basement door. "In her house." Elise made a sound I still cannot describe. She told me Grant had blocked visits for months. He said Judith's doctors believed family contact increased her confusion. He sent occasional photographs. Judith sitting in a chair. Judith looking tired. Judith with a blanket over her knees. There was never enough background to identify where she was. "Can she talk?" Elise asked. "Yes." Grant had told her no. We agreed not to contact him. I planned to open the exterior basement door the next afternoon while Grant was inspecting a fire-damaged apartment building in Covington. He canceled the job that morning. "Owner moved it to Monday," he said. Then he spent the entire day home. I smiled through lunch. We discussed centerpieces. At 5, he went downstairs. I heard the basement lock turn. I turned off the kitchen fan. His voice carried through the duct more clearly than Judith's. "You are making this harder than it needs to be," he said. Judith said something I could not understand. Grant answered, "Because it is being handled." Another broken reply. Then he said, very calmly, "After we are married, I do not need either of you agreeing with me forever." I stood beside the counter gripping a dish towel. He came upstairs 10 minutes later. "Tea?" he asked. I looked at him. "What?" "I am making tea." "You want some?" I said. "Sure." He smiled and kissed my cheek. That evening I texted Elise. "Tomorrow, noon." I did not try to collect anything else. I had spent days wanting enough proof to explain everything neatly. Judith had spent 5 months downstairs, while Grant explained everything neatly. The next day I told him I was meeting Naomi. About wedding invitations, Grant left shortly afterward to pick up supplies. I circled the block and came back. Elise was already parked 2 streets away. We approached from opposite sides of the yard. The latch on the cellar door needed a wrench. Of course it did. Grant had covered the fastener with a small steel plate, the kind of solution a contractor improvises when he does not want someone opening something. I had tools in my work vehicle. It took 4 minutes. Judith was waiting inside with a small overnight bag. When the door opened, she stared at the daylight. "Come on," I said. She did not move. "Judith?" she said. "He will say," confused. "Elise is here," I told her. Her face changed. Then Elise stepped around the cedar screen. "Mom?" Judith's bag dropped. I turned away. There are moments you have no right to watch directly. Getting Judith up the 2 concrete steps took longer than we expected. Her right leg resisted every movement. Elise offered an arm. Judith waved her off the first time, then accepted it on the second. We were halfway across the lawn when Grant's truck turned into the driveway. He stopped behind my car. For several seconds he remained inside. Then he got out. He looked at Judith, at Elise, and at me. "What the hell are you doing?" Elise moved in front of her mother. Grant ignored her. "Mallory, what did she tell you?" I remember that exact wording, not what happened. "What did she tell you?" "Enough," I said. "She is not competent. You do not understand the medical situation," Grant said. Judith said, "Stop." Grant kept talking. "She wanders. She gets confused. The exterior door was secured because she nearly fell out there twice." Elise said, "You told me she was in Knoxville. For her privacy?" Grant said. "You told me she could not speak." "She has good days." Grant took a step toward Judith. "Mom, come inside." Judith backed away. He reached for her arm. She pulled it against her body before he touched her. I stepped between them. Grant stared at me as though I had embarrassed him at a dinner party. "Mallory, come inside, please. We can talk like adults." A week earlier, I would have followed him. I would have wanted the conversation. I would have needed him to explain how the pieces could fit together without destroying the person I thought he was. I looked at the open front door behind him. No. His jaw tightened. "You are ending our relationship based on somebody who has documented cognitive problems? Do not," I said. "You do not even know what you are talking about." Maybe that was the first moment I understood the basement completely. The lock mattered, and the money mattered. But Grant's real system was simpler. He kept everyone apart. Judith downstairs, Elise in another state, me upstairs. Each of us received a different Grant and a different explanation for why the others could not be trusted. The moment we stood in the same yard, he started running out of places to put the truth. Elise got Judith into her car. Grant did not physically stop her. He stood in the driveway telling us we were making a serious mistake. That sentence followed me longer than any threat could have. The practical aftermath was slow. Judith received an independent capacity evaluation. Control of her finances was removed from Grant, while transactions involving his restoration company were reviewed. There were questions about unauthorized transfers, questions about the basement, and questions about whether Judith had actually consented to living there. My own accounts were easier to protect, but more humiliating to examine. I froze my credit, canceled the wedding, and moved into a short-term apartment. Every few days, another envelope arrived containing some version of my old life. Venue deposit, insurance paperwork, joint planning documents, financing correspondence. A few contained signatures I remembered making without reading carefully. Grant had placed papers in front of me and said, "This is the boring part." I had trusted him. He denied trying to steal my duplex. Through his attorney, he said the financing inquiry had been part of ordinary premarital planning and that I had misunderstood his intentions. He also told relatives I had become hostile toward him after meeting Elise. Some believed him, that bothered me more than I wanted it to. People like clean categories, a cruel man, an innocent woman, a locked room. But Grant had packed Judith's medication every Sunday. He had changed her sheets. He made sure she ate. He also kept her behind a locked door and told everyone she was somewhere else. Those things existed together. Judith moved in with Elise temporarily. We still speak occasionally. We are not unusually close. I think both of us prefer it that way. We did not meet because we chose each other. We met because one man had decided both of us were easier to manage separately. My duplex is still mine. I live there now, in the downstairs unit. For several months after leaving Grant, though, I stayed in an apartment across town because I could not stand the idea of owning anything he had once discussed as available money. One night in January, the heat came on. The building had old pipes. 3 knocks sounded inside the wall beside my bed. I reached out and tapped 3 times in reply. I did it before I knew I was doing it. A maintenance worker called from the hallway. "Sorry. Boiler." I told him it was fine. Then I sat beside the wall until the pipes stopped moving. There was nobody underneath me, nobody asking to be found. But I kept my hand against the plaster anyway.